Oh, the humanity chat. Where do you start? It's been a melee, and I make no apology for being honest and playing balanced games at the altar of Maximilian Verstappen sympathy slash empathy. Let me tell you what I mean. For the avoidance of doubt, we'll never ever on this channel sacrifice truth nor objectivity at the altar of partisanship and or any cognitive dissonance worthy of the moniker. Not now, not ever. And so of course you've got to play balanced game. Does that excuse Maximilian Verstappen's instance, the one that got him 10 seconds and 3 penalty license points on his super license? 1000% not, absolutely not. But does it give you the broader context, the lens, the comprehensive lens through which we need to ingest the Spanish Grand Prix round 9? I think so. 5BP, you're a legend. Go on, let's talk about it. We're going to go long today because there's a lot to talk about over the next 60 minutes. Let's talk about, we'll come to Max and we'll talk about the instances. Let's talk about OJ Piastri in the first instance. Now big favourite to win the Drivers' Championship. Big favourite. I'm not sure Lando has the minerals. I don't think he has. Forget the mental fortitude. I think that's a misnomer, a bit of a misdirection thing. I think what's happening here is that OJ Piastri is just a better bloody driver all over the shop. Let's go through the facets. Speed, probably OJ Piastri on the most recent form, especially in qualifying. Let's talk about execution, the ability to pull the best out of himself at the times when he needs it most. Tick again in the OJ Piastri box. Mental fortitude, robustness. Tick again in the OJ Piastri box. So where then does Lando Norris get it done? Maybe in terms of pace when he's had his Weetabix, but this was meant to be his resurgence. No, he was meant to be nailing the Spanish Grand Prix on the back of what even your boy said was an absolute god tier Monaco Grand Prix qualifying. He was amazing. Massenet, you saw what that dude was up to, and now look, we get to Spain and it's same old. OJ Piastri has the whip hand chat, and I'm not sure how Lando Norris or anyone else for that matter, including Maximilian Verstappen, driving an RB21 that's just not up to the task, can seize victory from the OJ Piastri jaws no mores of defeat. It's techie. Yeah, I mean, Oscar has to get a mention, surely, Benzi. But we will talk about Max Verstappen. I mean, that's obviously going to be the biggest story. But I feel like it does OJ Piastri a disservice not to talk about how metronomic he was. Indeed, he reminds me when he's at his best, when he's executing, when he's putting it on pole, despite or because of the techiest of techier circumstances. He reminds me a lot of Maximilian. Max Verstappen 2.0 is a bit of a stretch. It's reachy. He hasn't won 4 yet, has he? He hasn't even won 1 yet. But you see where I'm going with this. If we're extrapolating for the current Oscar Piastri line of travel, then you can draw dotted parallel lines between the two. The way that they drive, the forensic vehicular positioning, if I can get my words out. You know where I'm going with that. And it stands to reason that Oscar Piastri is a big favourite now to win the Drivers' Championship. 49 points down the road from Max. And I'm comparing as a variance to Max because I don't think Lando Norris has the minerals. That's just the truth and the honest truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth. Lando only wins when he's supposed to. Chiba. You take the words right out of my mouth. 5PP says, no excuses. A typical immature Verstappen move. Nothing new at all. Stop blaming others for his decision. Oh, someone provoked me. Therefore, I had to get physical. Something my son was at. Go on, let's talk about it. 5BP. Just when I was out 5PP, you drag me back in. Look, here's the Max Verstappen thing. I was just talking to a friend about this and I thought it was quite interesting. I'm reminded of a boxing documentary that honed in on Mike Tyson. For all of, and again, Mike Tyson and Max Verstappen are two very different things, but there are similarities to be drawn. Let me explain what I mean. The dude, when talking about Mike Tyson, said there is a reason why we are attracted to him as a whirling dervish, for all the PA nightmares and biting Lennox Lewis's ankle, etc., etc. There is a reason why we, as a demographic, as fans of pugilism and sports more broadly, are attracted to Mike Tyson like a moth to a flame. And this fella, I can't remember his name even, it doesn't matter, but he contended that the reason why people watch are so drawn to Mike Tyson like a moth to a flame is because there is us in him. We see in all of the chaos the things that we want to do. Ergo, I say all of that to say this. Those in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. I was thinking about Maximilian Verstappen's move. And again, I was talking to a colleague at work. Shout out to JP. And I would sometimes like to move like Max Verstappen does. I would sometimes, when I feel aggrieved, want to just desperately run into George Russell to make a point right. But I don't have the cojones. I care too much. Max Verstappen does not give a fudge. Now, depending on which side of the Max Verstappen fence you're sitting, you either admire and respect that, or you loathe it, hate it, no, detest it at the altar of sports etiquette or lack thereof. But I think it's worth noting that Max Verstappen only wants to win. Outside of that, there is nothing. There is no Met Gala. There is no corporate peacocking, let's say. There is no politicking. He's here within these parameters where Max Verstappen operates, and he just wants to win. I'm reminded of last year, was it Hungary? Remember where he crashed into? He had the incident with Sir Lewis. I think Maximilian Verstappen just felt hard done by it, if I'm going to play empathy games before we go and charge Maximilian Verstappen later on. Cam, I don't understand why Charles and George didn't get penalised. Both would have earned the Max Verstappen. Max looks fed up. He's doing. Max even looks fed up. He's doing his bit. RBR. Go on then, Liam. You're too kind as all. But we'll get into the Max Verstappen thing. So there is that relatability where I think everything is drawn to Max Verstappen. Indeed, you could argue, as at the 1st of June 2025, that Max Verstappen sucks all the light out of the room. Some of you guys are saying, listen, there's no point in watching Formula One this year if not for Max Verstappen. And I hear that argument that all things kind of, he is the F1 blast radius. But for those shenanigans, but for him feeling aggrieved, the communication over the radio, the incident with George, the incident with Charles, etc., etc., would we have even had anything to talk about? What would the bigger story have been out of the Spanish Grand Prix? I'll wait. Non-rhetorical question. Ergo, there would not have been one. We would have been talking about strategy and all of these nonsense, low-hanging journalistic tropes just to make videos. So tick in that sense for Maximilian Verstappen. You'll be disingenuous to argue anything to the contrary. However, if we let's break down what happened and what was said, because there's a lot in that broadcast, particularly towards the end, the final 10 laps. There was a lot said, and I think it needs breaking down over the course of the next 49 minutes or less. Go on, in the first instance, you will know that Maximilian Verstappen, they rolled the dice, didn't they? We talked about it during the stream. The Red Bull are brilliant at being underdogs. They don't hesitate to play a joker. What Hannah Schmitz, the god-tier strategic mind that she is, what she realised, and it was in her gift to do this, that they were never going to beat McLaren and the MCL39 in a straight out gunfight. It just wasn't going to happen. They had no chance, not on pace grounds, not in terms of trying to out-deg them. No chance. They've still got that double brake duct. They've still got the bloody tyre water, the electrothermo cooling or whatever you want to call it. They've still got aero efficiency, the likes of which no other team on the grid can match. They are still god tier. They have the pace and they can access it on the hat like whenever they want to. That, ladies and gentlemen, is a chaos of a combination for the 2025 champion. That is a winning combination. It's Rob Marshall, of course it is, the TD018 front flexi wing. That incentive or directive even was brought in with a view to try and level the competitive playing field. McLaren didn't even need to submit any bloody upgrades. They have it in hand. They've already done their homework, dotted all of their aerodynamic and mechanical I's and crossed all of the requisite T's. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is chaos. That's why you see Oscar Piastri running off down the road easy, managing temps, do you know what I mean? Lifting and coasting, turning the engine down to 8, doing the Fangio thing and winning with in the way that's most efficient, extracting the tax from the car, the least tax that they can. That's why they've got a car that's bloody quick. Do you know what I mean? That's the only reason why. Now, against that background, Max Verstappen and Hannah Schmitz, the Red Bulls, they decided that they were never going to they couldn't two-stop. If McLaren were two-stopping, then they, of course, had to three-stop. If McLaren three-stopped, then they'd have to two-stop. Whatever those lot do in front of you and then their papaya-coloured cars, do something different, because they were never going to win in a straight fight. The car is too fast, the operation far too tightly wound. So Hannah Schmitz did what Hannah Schmitz does, and she played a joker. Three stop was always going to be tough, and ultimately it wasn't going to work. It wasn't going to overcome the pace deficit. It wasn't going to work. You saw towards the end that Max Verstappen tried everything that he could, drove the wheels off that car quite literally, and even then he was failing as far as track position into the final stage, the dying embers of the Spanish Grand Prix. Then what? Bearing in mind, when you do a cheeky three-stopper, you use the bulk of the tyres. What happened then? Max Verstappen said, why, on the back of this bloody safety car, Kimi Antonelli, reliability issues, ends up parking it out on track. You have yourself a safety car circumstance. That was the worst thing that could have happened to Red Bull and Max Verstappen, on the back of them having put all their eggs in a three-stop basket. Why? Because they had no tyres left. The only tyres that were even remotely fresh, fit for purpose for a 10-lap stint at the end of the Spanish Grand Prix round 9, were bloody white labelled hard. Not fit for purpose, I hear you shout. Absolutely flipping not. But what did you want them to do? Put on another set of soft compound tyres that had 15 laps on them, because that's the only things that he had left. Again, victim of circumstance, no fortuitous circumstances or lack thereof. The racing gods today were not smiling on the balls that are red, nor Hannah Schmitz, nor Max Verstappen. So Max Verstappen was well within his right then, on the back of the safety car circumstance, to say, what's going on? Maybe you should have left me out. What was the point? You brought me in, you put me on these white labelled hard compound tyres. I'm a sitting duck, therefore, just as was Sir Lewis in 2021 in Abu Dhabi over the course of the final tour of that season. Sitting duck settings. The others around him, all of them, by the way, the two in front in Oscar and the two behind in Charles and King George Russell of King George, Kings Lynn, Norfolk. All of those bods, all four of them, were on soft compound tyres, 2 to 3 lap old, each and every single one of them. Ergo, Max Verstappen was a sitting duck. Max is brilliant, don't get it twisted, but he's not a miracle worker. You expect him to do. That's why he's frustrated already. And if you get in Max Verstappen's mindset, that's why the dude is fuming. Like, hang on, I've driven my heart out for like 56 laps around here. I'm in a car that doesn't work. The brakes don't work. I'm battling with understeer, aerodynamic efficiency or lack thereof. And I'm trying to win a championship. Lest we forget the 5th consecutive, something that only one other person in F1 history has done. That person had a name, and his name is Michael Schumacher. So what are we doing here? Red Bull, I asked you, I begged, demanded of you that you built me a car capable of winning championships. Where is that? Max Verstappen is saying, lest we forget the operational ineptitudes that Red Bull have experienced this year in the pits. The bloody automated red light doesn't work, can't get a teammate, so no, the sun nowhere to be seen when Max Verstappen has and needs help. Like, of course he's going to be fuming. Of course he's glass half empty, not to excuse it, but to explain it. They put him on hards, and then all of a sudden you see the big bloody oversteer moment. Now, the oversteer moment, uncharacteristic error of the unforced variety from one soon to a 5-time champion, Max Emilian Verstappen. Just shows you that he was feeling the pressure. He knew he had to do something. And then their hard compound tyres, he needed to gap Charles Leclerc because he was always a sitting duck on that bloody long straight going into turn 1. George Russell 2 on soft compound. So of course he had to push it. Uncharacteristic error forced from Maximilian Verstappen. Of course that was coming, but you saw how he corrected it, eh? Bloody Nora. Drift King settings, Suchia San, Gansan settings, any initial D settings, and he wasn't bad, but of course he made the mistake in the first instance, and thereafter he was a sitting duck. But Charles Leclerc did what Charles Leclerc does. Cam said Max acted out because of GB, and Nando will get to it, chap. I promise you we'll get to it, but this context is important. Nando, doesn't everybody? Safak, what's Safak saying? Because we're meant to be going back and forth here. Rosberg is kissing AWS at Sky Sports. We'll talk about Rosberg because I won't have you guys take Rosberg's name in vain. He's a straight shooter. Agree or disagree with his opinions, he's only going to shoot straight each and every single time. And for that, I think he deserves respect. But bear with me, we'll come to Rosberg. So Max, of course, is always going to try something. And again, he has that massive oversteer moment. But then you have the instant one. There's three key instances that need breaking down. Instance number one is Charles. Instance number two is George. And instance number two is the one for which Max got the penalty ultimately. Still with instance number one, Exhibit A in the first. So Charles Leclerc's coming on the straight and he's spoken to this, by the way, in the post-race presser. Charles sees that Max Verstappen has hard compound tyres on, so he's a sitting duck. Charles knows that he's going to have more pace and more grip, therefore, going into turn one. And so what does Charles do? With a view to nail the geometric racing line, he gives Maximilian Verstappen a cheeky love kiss, quite deliberately. You can hear Charles Leclerc alluding to this in the cool down room. So too, when they get to the post-race press conference with Lando and Oscar, Charles says words to these effect. Yeah, Max is all well within his rights to complain. If I were Max in that circumstance, I would complain too. We came together and it was almost like a calculated thing. I knew that I needed to take the racing line and I needed to seize that from Max. Words to that effect. I'm paraphrasing ever so slightly. Ergo, Charles knew what he was doing. There was a cheeky love tap. Go and check. Don't believe me? Go and check Anthony Davidson's Skypad analysis. Anthony Davidson says exactly the same thing. Don't look from the bird's eye view, the bloody helicopter that's tailing both Max and Charles at an angle. You need to draw some parallel lines on there to see, like Carlos Sainz and Checo Perez, which one of them is moving on the straight. And ultimately, when you take a step back and see the F1 wood for the F1 trees, even Anthony Davidson, for all of the vitriol that he spewed historically about and against Max Verstappen, even he says that if we're playing culpability games, if you're going to charge somebody with automotive pugilistic malfeasance, then that dude has a name on the straight, and his name is modern day Journalese, aka Charles Leclerc. So that's Exhibit A dealt with. Lest we forget already, Max Verstappen is boiling right. Why did you put me on the hards? I'm in this SH1T box of an RB21. It can't brake, nor can it turn on low minimum speed turns. Max is fuming already, and then he gets a cheeky, so instance 5 for Maximilian Verstappen fuming. Then he gets a cheeky love tap by Charles Leclerc, which in his mind at the very least, and perception is reality sometimes, in his mind cost him the final podium place, right? Charles Leclerc's gone by him. Then you get into turn one, and King George, Russell being the killer that he is, sees that opportunity that Charles Leclerc's punched a hole. Karting settings, just follow him, therefore. That's what King George Russell of Kings Lynn, Norfolk is thinking, and he does it. But there's three key things, and again, I'm paraphrasing all that Anthony Davidson said on the Sky Sports F1 internationally syndicated broadcast. Remember that the rules have changed as far as overtaking inside and outside. In this instance, George was the attacker going up the inside. So what did he need to do per the rules? The International Sporting Code of Conduct, as it sits fair, as at the 1st of the 6th, 2025, 3 boxes he needed to tick. In the first instance, to comply with the rules as they're set out, George Russell needed to make sure that he was, at the very least, his front axle was alongside Max Verstappen's wing mirrors. He was that. Tick. That's one of 3 boxes nailed. In the second instance, George Russell needed to make sure that he executed for the manoeuvre up the inside of Max, all the while keeping it within track limits, between the white lines, therefore, on the black stuff, on the island. Tick. George Russell nails 2 out of 3. So he's only got 1 box to nail, right, to make sure it's a fully legal, fully compliant overtaking manoeuvre up the inside of forcing to be 5-time Mr. Verstappen. And that third box looks something like this. Make sure you have full control of the car throughout the overtake on combined entry as at apex and combined exit. Big, fat cross. I'm reminded of Sir Lewis Hamilton 2021 Silverstone. It wasn't a big understeer moment from George, or oversteer even, but it was one that he needed to correct for. Go back and see the onboard of George. It's a right-hander that they're going into in turn 1 though, and at some point George is doing one of these, turning into the oversteer moment, and that has to matter, chat, if you're determining whether the overtake from George on Max into turn 1 is legal, particularly as you see George correct for the oversteer, and turn into and ultimately hit Maximilian Verstappen Umanch. We are taking things at face value. Max has carried pressure all season, team issues, pit errors, bad car. Today we saw breaking point, disappointed Umanch. I think you've nailed it ever so much more succinctly than I'm trying to do. But go on, we'll get to it. We're going to give it the proper colour and context because it's a Sunday show. We go long. Why use one word when you can use 100,000? So then you get the contact, which makes it worse, right? That for me double underlines the fact that George Russell, just as Sir Lewis Hamilton didn't throughout the 2021 Silverstone manoeuvre at Copse, there was a split second there when George Russell didn't have full control of his car, during which he hits Max Verstappen, and it's not a small hit, substantial. Anthony Davidson on the internationally syndicated Sky F1 broadcast even remarks, look how hard Max Verstappen's head is jolted in the contact. It was a serious hit. After which Max Verstappen says, you know what, as he does, I'm not going to fight you here. You've detrimented my path. So takes the runoff area as you would. Smart racing mind is Max. Comes back on, yields the place to Charles Leclerc. He's gone now. Charles is done. But comes back on the track ahead of King George Russell of Kings Lynn Norfolk. That's significant. Because again, the rules, there's never there's a line of least resistance, but there's always shades of grey in Formula One, right? It's never ever black and white. It's never ever X or Y. Sometimes there are interlocking Venn diagrams for which we need to unpick. In this instance, there is another rule that states that you can't go off track and gain a lasting advantage. We saw that recently with Max and Lando, Mexico, COTA 2024, right? You can't go off the track and gain a lasting advantage. If you're in the throes of an overtake or defending somebody and you go off track and you gain a lasting advantage, then you have to give back that place. But depending on the circumstance preceding, sometimes you might not have to. In this instance, GP Maximilian Verstappen's race engineer comes over the radio and instructs Max to give the pace back, to which your old mate chat, Nico Rosberg, reacts and says no, bursts over. And you know it's deep here because normally on the broadcast, when somebody's speaking over the radio, it's zero communication, radio silence, so that we as viewers, as fans of F1 can hear exactly what's being said over the radio. Nico Rosberg bends and breaks the rules at every single turn, does he not? Screams out, no, GP, why are you doing that? Why? Because he thinks Nico, and again, this is in real time, no replays. Nico Rosberg sees that George Russell is responsible for that incident. Ergo, Max Verstappen did the right thing by going down the runoff area and keeping himself the place. Ergo, there is no need, per Nico Rosberg, one-time champion 2016, to give that place back if you are Max Verstappen, because for the incident, Max was not responsible. How techie is that? That Nico Rosberg has that guttural reaction and just says, no, GP, don't tell him to give back the place. And even if you think he needs to give back the place, sometimes you just got to take the penalty, right? Allow Max Verstappen to go off down the road for a couple different reasons. In the first instance, who's to say that Max Verstappen on them hard tyres are super unlikely, but couldn't gap a George Russell to the tune of 5 seconds and equal, more than offset the penalty? Super unlikely. But again, stranger things have happened. Anything can and sometimes does happen in Formula One. In the second instance, there's something to be said for the burden, right? Mental fortitude is not something that Max lacks for. This isn't Lando Norris 2.0, aka Dustin from Stranger Things, that we're talking about here. But yet and still, there's something to be said for managing your driver's mood. Now, on the back of last year, you saw Austria, you saw Hungary. There's always been a criticism of Max, particularly of late when you see Oscar Piastri, who is literally inflappable. Here, flat lines each and every single time. Max Verstappen is a fiery character, especially when he feels aggrieved and especially when he doesn't feel like he has the support and infrastructure around him in the team, in them making the good decisions, in them having a set of soft compound tyres ready to go in the case that there is a safety car and a dire embers of a Spanish Grand Prix, as an example. So Max at this point is already feeling aggrieved, hard done by, a perceived sense of injustice, let's say. And then GP thinks that he's going to say, give the place back, Max. That's within the rules, and that's not going to incur the wrath of a fire-breathing dragon in Maximilian Verstappen. Of course it is. Now, this isn't me saying shoot the messenger, but GP's normally so brilliant. I suppose it's not ineptitude, but the extent to which the message was tone deaf was loud, pun intended, because GP normally nails these things. He has that communication on lock historically with his mate, his little brother, Maximilian Verstappen. He normally gives him the crumbs that he needs to extract out of Max Verstappen the best of his performance. In that instance, though, I feel like GP dropped the ball. The communication, the timing of it, we almost heard it in real time, and then the very next second you see Maximilian Verstappen exacting his revenge. Max is like, you know what, he ran me off track. What are you talking about? Give back the place. Why give back the place to who? For what? Didn't you see him run me off track? Nearly broke my neck, chap. The extent to which he hit my car and ran me off the road is what Maximilian Verstappen's. And now you want me to give George back the place, yeah? How about you hold this? That's what Max Verstappen's saying. Let me show you. I'll give back the place. I will show you give back the place. How about you put that in your pipe, King George Russell, and smoke it? And again, I speak like that because I don't think, he without sin cast the first stone. I don't think that's not in me, you and we to get a cheeky bit of revenge. Some have described your boy Cameron CC as super vengeful at times. I think I might have done the same, if I'm honest. If we're talking serious and honest, I'm not going to do the proselytizing, pious thing, I'm holier than thou thing. If I felt that sense of injustice that Max Verstappen was clipped, now this isn't me saying it's the right thing to do, 1000% not. Of course, particularly at the altar of Maximilian Verstappen's Drivers' Championship, 4 soon to be 5. Can you say that with a serious face anymore? Probably not. And does Max enhance his probability with that manoeuvre? Absolutely not. Au contraire, mon ami. But sometimes the rest doesn't matter. I've been there. I'll be honest with you. There's no way that I'm going to stand up on my pulpit of piety and chastise Max Verstappen for not having the level of sporting etiquette that the British media would expect from him. Listen, I've done worse on the football pitch, on a karting track. So again, I say to you guys, those without sin should cast the first stone. No, this doesn't make it right. Absolutely not. But sometimes you've got to put the accountability mirror up at oneself. Do you know what I mean? Before you start criticising Maximilian Verstappen for losing his marbles because he doesn't have the things that he needs, the tool nor the artillery to combat for the 5th consecutive driver championship, something that only one man's managed to do in F1 history. He has a name, and his name is Maximilian Verstappen. Joy says, yes, after everything that's happened to Max Verstappen and Max Verstappen's team, I would not blame him for acting out this way. And it's not right that Mantle is getting retired. It isn't right. I don't think it was the right. Nobody can claim in good faith, with a straight face, not tongue-in-cheek, that it was the right thing to do from Max Verstappen. Not at the altar of the Drivers' Championship, not even optimising for his performance. It was a revenge attack. Even when bloody Rachel Brooks asked him, was that deliberate, Max? Max couldn't even say no. He just said, does it even matter whether it was deliberate? Why? Because Max is a truth sayer. He knows that it was deliberate. Of course it was deliberate. Should he have got a black flag? Can you argue for Max Verstappen getting a black flag? Just as Schumacher did in Jerez 97, potentially, if you want to. But per Maximilian Verstappen, does it even matter at this stage? 49 points behind Oscar Piastri. There was a perceived sense of injustice, and sometimes perception is reality. Navy SEAL says Max is still the man. I don't hate it. He's not a bad peddler, but sadly today we can't. And it was a bloody brilliant drive from the chap as well, for Pete's sake. Do you know what I mean? Keeping that RB21, keeping those papaya-coloured cars honest. Rosniers makes no difference. 66 laps, 100% of the race entire. I mean, but they won't talk about that. They won't talk about that, will they? Pekonovic, Franz Hermann will replace Max, who should be banned for 1 race. Well, saying that, speaking of the race ban, 12 points is how many points you need to have on your super license to get banned. Interestingly, I feel like they normally hand out points in 2s, don't they? This time they gave Max Verstappen a 3-point penalty, which is interesting. That takes him to 11. 12 to get a 1 race ban. How interesting is that, chat? Why? I've never seen anybody get three points on their super license. I have no idea. What does that mean going forward? Well, of course, to avoid a race ban, Max Verstappen is going to have to be cognizant of the downside risk that comes with that. So too, Austria in a couple of races where his first 2 points, they roll off, don't they, at these points. Max will now have these 3 penalty points for a year, 12 months worth, and then they will roll off. The next time some of Max Verstappen's 11 points currently on his super license roll off, there will be 2 at the Austrian Grand Prix in a couple of weekends' time. It's going to get techie, chat. I'm telling you, it is going to get, I don't know, stop pseudo hating. No, because no one remembers who finished third, Cam. It's techie, that GP. No one remembers who finished third, but sometimes you've got to look. Let's argue the opposite case. Should Max have done that? Well, if you're talking about winning a championship, probably not. And that's why you know that Max was really perturbed, because again, that dude just wants to win. Anything short of a win, a victory, a 25 points doesn't count for Max Verstappen. But if you're having that conversation under the umbrella heading of a championship win, then surely it would make sense, if we're critiquing Max Verstappen, to play nice, not get yourself a 10-place penalty, particularly on the back of safety car when all of the grid are bunched up. Surely it makes sense to play nice with George. Just let him go by, or fight with him even. Or make a decision and disobey GP, even though he's enraged you. Play 4D chess, rise up above it and see the field for what it is, 60,000 feet. Sometimes Max has the ability to do that, but because GP's told him very specifically, it's almost as if they've already had that conversation with the FIA and GP's advising, although the FIA in their stewards report don't allude to that. There's no championship. Max knows that, Michael. It's techie, isn't it? It feels like it's slipping away second by second, Ollie. So what if somebody does the same thing against a championship rival? What are you meaning, Ollie? What Max did? Well, assuming that the FIA are nothing if not consistently consistent, as opposed to being consistently inconsistent, the reality of the circumstance, you would assume that they give the same penalty. But let's check this out. If you're talking about consistency, let's remember the last few material instances not dissimilar to what Max did. 97 Jerez. Well, Michael Schumacher got banned for the whole. You remember what happened there? It was Michael and it was Jacques Villeneuve. They were racing for the championship then, and Michael Schumacher very deliberately turned in on Jacques Villeneuve with a view to save himself a championship. What happened then? Well, Michael Schumacher got disqualified from the championship. Rewind a couple of years back, 1994. Again, Schumacher for the championship on Damon Hill at Adelaide. What happened then? Well, Michael Schumacher did exactly the same thing that he did in 97, Jerez. And what happened there? The FIA did one of these, turned the blind eye. Damon Hill lost himself a championship. And the FIA out here talking about they disbelieve the evidence that their own eyes and ears are presenting to them. What is that all about, chat? Nonsense. Nothing if not consistently inconsistent. And then a couple of years back, Sebastian Vettel, Baku, he felt aggrieved at a perceived brake test by his old mate Sir Lewis, Carl Davidson Hamilton. And what did Seb do? Drove clean alongside Sir Lewis and crashed quite deliberately into it. Luckily for them, it was at low speed, so no damage, no harm, no foul. What did it give to Sebastian Vettel that day? A 10-second pit stop, a stop and go. Drive through the pits, stop the car for 10 seconds, and then go on your way. So that amounts to about 35 seconds. So what did I give Max Verstappen today? A 10-second penalty. Listen, you can't depend on the FIA to be consistent. That would be, colour me naive for even thinking that that's a thing. Consistency, FIA, those two things are contradiction in terms, oxymoronic even as verbiage. You shouldn't put them in the same sentence. Sebastian hitting Lewis doing safety car. Was it Singapore, Chiba? I thought it was Baku. Simon on the broadcast reminded me of it. I thought it might have been Baku, but I digress. Baku, yeah, there we go, Chiba. Umant says, Max committed to one of the most horrendous moves that I have ever seen recently. Why the fudge are Max haters attacking us? My God, we know he did wrong for grow a pet. Umach, I tell you why, chap, because of the football. If we get, this is what we talk to all the time: objectivity, truth, value. We won't sacrifice any one of them at the altar of partisanship. Not now, not ever. Won't, can't. Here's the thing, Umach. when a circumstance like this happens, scavengers are going to scavenge, right? Like, it's open season on Max Verstappen. How very dare he? I told you that Max Verstappen. Like, what do you mean? As if Suzuka didn't happen. As if somehow Spain has wiped out, made fade to black all of the brilliance that we've seen from Maximilian Verstappen. What? No, I haven't. It's nonsense. I can't engage that tosh meaningfully because it doesn't deserve to be engaged meaningfully. Now, I prioritise sporting endeavour par excellence each and every single time, to a fault, I might add, to where all of the indiscretions of, I don't know, a Floyd Mayweather, a John Bones Jones, a Michael Jordan, and now a Maximilian Verstappen, even a Sir Lewis Hamilton back in his pump. Like, all of that stuff, all of the indiscretions, they fade to black. They're lost in the roundings, 2 decimal place settings. All I care about is a Suzuka around the outside, 2 trailer park goals on Charles Leclerc on a full tank of fuel. That's all that I care about. All of this stuff, ultimately, this sporting etiquette gubbins, yeah, it means a lot to some people, especially those who want an axe to grind against a Max Verstappen, and that's cool. That's okay. But again, far from it to be me to tell people about the lens through which they need to ingest their F1, because I think that's piety personified. Is it not, Umach? How he reacted was wrong, not he was standing by, Easy G says. Tiro says, FIA tried to do everything to make Damon Hill a champion in 1994. Did they really, Tiro? He'll beat Schumacher only once in 1994. That gives a good point of view how much the FIA was behind him. Hill also took out Schumacher. Go on then, Tiro, enlighten me. What if they... It's techie, this. We're digging up old F1 bones here. If they really wanted to give it to Damon Hill, surely they'd just penalise Schumacher and disqualify him for the incident. What better excuse? You know what I mean? That's quite a deliberate crash in Adelaide, turn 4, whatever. Just disqualify Schumacher. I would argue that that's a case in point that disproves your thesis, Tira. Even the female reporter interviewing Matt said precisely that. She said the move wipes out Imola. Okay, Umach, let's get to this. I wanted to address it and you reminded me. So Brooksy, when speaking to Lando Norris, I think, and trying to draw... Brooksy did a really good job, I think. And we'll talk about Rosberg as well, because I think it's quite important. Rosberg was levels all race weekend. He was hitting all of the high notes, and I thought he was brilliant. In real time, didn't even need the replay to read some of these circumstances. Very techie circumstances. They were very techie, and Rosberg was nailing all of them, sticking the dismount. I think at this point, internationally syndicated broadcast Sky F1 just need to give that dude a check, allow him to write his number on there. Do you know what I mean? That's the type of weekend Nico Rosberg had. He doesn't care. He's free, liberated from the shackles of managing key stakeholder expectations. Fire him. Well, what do I care? I can devote more time to my sustainable endeavours, my extracurricular activities, spend more time. He doesn't care. He's there just for fits and gigs. He cares not, and that's why you can call these buds out. That's why you can shoot straight. That's why you can look Andrea Stella in his face and say, you know what, this 2 number 1 driver gubbins about which you speak is always going to end in tears. He just doesn't care, does he? And I think that's worthy of note. I think Rosberg in that sense is to be congratulated on a brilliant weekend as a colour commentator. Now, will Max Verstappen hate some of the things that Nico Rosberg said? 100%. He said that Max should have got black flagged for the instance on the grounds of intent. I mean, interesting. Black flag for intent. Potential. I don't know. You guys let me know in the chat whether you think Max Verstappen's incident of the race with George Russell was worthy of a black flag. I don't know. What constitutes a black flag? Black flag is the disqualification, right? Black and white flag is do it again and then you're going to get disqualified. But what do you have to do to get a black flag? Is it just intent? No, very much. I think Nico was onto one. I stand by whatever he said. Clear disqualification, you think, Umach, or a 10? Yeah, the stop and go I think was more realistic. I think the stop and go, but they can't just disqualify. I mean, the FI still need to level the competitive. What we can't have, chat, is 2 orange cars running down the road, and that's what it looks like is going to happen. Sadly, I don't know. Hamilton fans are crying. Octay, you're a legend. Oof. Wait, 11 points, 1 remaining. You can wait for it. Being 12, Red Bull crew and the haters, Max will pass through that. Maybe, I don't know, you can't rule him out, Arte, but at this judge, 49 points off of Oscar. Oh, the humanity. Apparently your boy's been talking too much. And the crowd loses their marbles. Andy, Max fudged up. It is what it is. Let's move on. Did he fudge up? Look at your boy getting defensive, folding his arms. I think Max's mistake. Go on, and let's go through the Max Verstappen mistakes. Yeah, he shouldn't. If he wants to win a championship, and we're gonna put on our critiquing caps, there's a couple of things that Max didn't need to do. He didn't need to do the incident with George. I understand why he did it. I might have done the same. I'm not going to jump on my piety pulpit and cast stones when I'm living in a glass house. I'm infallible as much as the next person. Do you know what I mean? I have feelings and emotions, and revenge is a dish. Forget best served cold, best served piping hot. If you're me, revenge. I've got a penchant for revenge. I've got to be honest, and that's why I think I sympathise potentially with Max. But again, 2 mistakes. He shouldn't have done that George Russell thing. He didn't need to. And again, that only diminishes the probability of him getting a 5th back-to-back. So, like, shouldn't have done that. And again, an uncharacteristic error, the oversteer moment. But again, he's hot. I get it. He's racing Charles. Yeah, Max was cheesed off, wasn't he? We need to ask Nico what he thinks about sausage and whether he would like to share. Mate, I don't even know what you're talking. Cameron, I'm listening to you in the background, doing other things at the same time, so maybe missing something. Just wanted to put... Tiro, I get you. I hear you with the 1994 thing, but I would beg to differ. Let's hope Imola pace will be better. Well, apparently not. TD018 is well in effect, right? That was what was meant to level the competitive landscape, and it's done nothing of the sort. You contend that it might have, au contraire, mon ami. McLaren have never looked better, faster, managing for tyre degging real. I mean, they just looked incredible. Like, especially in OJP's hands. Flipping Nora, you're having a laugh, ain't you? Stiff upper lip. Go on, let's talk about Nico very quickly, because I think he just can't help but be he's going to call it. You might disagree. What I don't like that the F1 community does, myself included, is calls agenda for a translation for I disagree. Respectfully. Oh, he's got an agenda. No, he just disagreed. What agenda has Nico Rosberg got against Max? I don't think he likes Max necessarily, or he didn't like racing against Max. I'll tell you that from that much is true. But I don't think he's got an agenda against Max. If he had an agenda against Max, it would be super easy for him to say, you know what, GP was right. He should have handed the place back. But Nico Rosberg, straight shooter, called it as he sees it and says, no, that's wrong, GP. Max wasn't at fault for the first instance with George. George had a cheeky understeer moment, and then Max doesn't need to go. As a result, Max does not need to give that place back to George. He didn't need to. That's Nico Rosberg's words, not mine. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I think that's the case in point for me why Nico Rosberg doesn't have an agenda against Max Verstappen. Far too often, we, myself included, use as a community agenda for a translation to I just disagree. Respectfully, I disagree, and I think it's lazy. Not quite troglodyte behaviour or Abbott of unreasoning, but nearly. And I think we're better than that. We there are more words. I'll tell you a legend. I don't think McLaren lose it, but I know Max will win superb races this year and has done already, Octave, by the way. Let the record show. So with Max all the way, Red Bull pit is really dumb. If Max goes with mediums at least 5 to 6 laps, then he wouldn't pit again. Ugh. Go on, Octave. Let's talk about this before I give Booksy some props as we round third base. So I'm going to have a chat with Mr. Windsor tomorrow, and Mr. Windsor's going to tell me that that Red Bull are muggles, that all of this is born of their mistakes, their ineptitudes, their inability to select a proper strategy. But I'm going to have to disagree respectfully with the savant of all things F1 that Peter Windsor is. I think as I was watching it and as we were calling it together, I thought that Hannah Schmitz had one play, and that was to do everything opposite to McLaren. You know, like when you've got two drivers fighting over the same piece of track and it comes round to the pit stops and they say, box opposite of Leclerc or whoever else is in front. I think that's the strategic equivalent of what Red Bull had to do, because they were never going to keep with McLaren. They didn't have pace to keep with McLaren. But if McLaren did 2 stops, they had to do 3. They couldn't do. They were never going to. If again, as Red Bull love to, they're line steppers and they race hard. Of course, they wanted to win a race, and if they wanted to win a race, then they had to act accordingly. There was a contrarian tax, therefore, to be paid. They couldn't follow suit as far as McLaren, because that would have been a hiding to nothing. You're playing to lose. 3rd place was the best that they could have got. Max demonstrated the extreme version of behaviour. Yuki and Hajar have been judged to have it in spades, yet they do not receive the same level of grace. We race as one, right? Go on then, let me address that easy. Okay, let me finish your hot days first. Go on then. I just don't think, again, I'm prepping my argument ahead of my conversation with Mr. Windsor on the F1 Hour tomorrow. But I just don't think anybody can be a Monday morning quarterback, right? 2020 hindsight is every single time. Anybody can be a genius from their armchair after the fact. And I just think in the moment, you've got to respect Hannah Schmitz for rolling the dice and trying to keep, like, you roll a 6 the first time, but she needed to keep rolling 6s. If Max Verstappen had any hope of winning himself a race today, Hannah Schmitz had to keep rolling 6s. And I feel like she kept rolling 6s until finally the racing gods turned their back on her and dealt her fortuitous circumstances, or lack thereof, in Kimi Antonelli's reliability issues and the safety car and the dying embers of the race. But for that, I think Red Bull was chef's kiss. They rolled the dice and kept rolling it and played a joker when they needed to. And I think they'd optimised. They were as good as they were going to get. And again, it never going to result in a race victory, never under those circumstances, but very bloody nearly. I mean, you've got to optimise for your circumstance. So I don't think Red Bull weren't daft. I think they played. Should they have had an extra soft compound? Of course they should have. But what happens? What do you think happens when you do? Would you have had Max do a stint in his 3 stopping strategy on hards? Absolutely flipping not. You've got to use up all the softs, right? And especially he's fighting in qualifying for P1. So of course he's going to use a couple. I don't know what else they could have done. Everybody can be a Monday morning quarterback, but I don't know. Go on then, EC. Let me address your point. Max demonstrated the extreme version. So I do think there's a truism as far as Max is concerned. I think people are scared of Max. I think he wields a lot of power. I think he's forcing to be a 5-time champion potentially. And with that comes a sense of entitlement and privilege. But rightly so. I mean, he's 4-time champion. I feel like Lewis to a lesser extent, but Lewis has always had this paranoia, this deep-seated paranoia, because of the way that he came to the fore in F1. It was always a tenuous circumstance, one wrong move, and Lewis always felt like everything could be taken away from him. But Max has never had that level of paranoia. He was always supposed to be there, and with that comes a certain, like a swagger, that I'm here because I was always going to be here. My godfather's Michael Schumacher. My old man is Jos Verstappen, who raced with Michael Schumacher at Benetton. Do you know what I mean? My future father-in-law is a 3-time champion in 81, 83 and 87, Nelson Pitt. Do you know what I mean? He's got that. He's been in around. He's meant to be there. So with that comes a certain, you have to extend Max Verstappen grace because he demands it of you. Do you know what I mean? Yuki Tsunoda, not that this is right, EC, necessarily. This isn't set fair. This isn't UNICEF or the UN. Like, do you know what I mean? We're not talking about fairness and equity. This is Formula One, and it's not always. It will never ever be, nor has it ever been a meritocracy. So Yuki Tsunoda and Isaac Hadjar can't. They will never get extended the same grace as even a Lewis or a Max, because both of those respectively has 7-time and 4-time privilege. They mean something different to Formula One. You imagine Formula One for a second, chat. If Lewis retires and Max Verstappen hangs it up in the same year, what's left of F1 really? What, you're going to hang your hat on Charles versus like Lando? All of a sudden the billions, the 1.4 billion that Alpine are worth, would be like 1.0 Do you know what I mean? It would come down massively. So it's a long-winded way and a very circumnavigated or circumlocuted way of me answering your question, EC. But I hope I have, mate. I've done my best there. I think more the why that's the case, then I can't debate you that is the case. Nothing justifies that box to hards. Go on then, Umach. Explain me the antithesis. What were they to do? Max is fighting for pole, so of course he's going to use all the softs that he needs to in quali. I can't begrudge that. If you're going to do a 3-stop, what would you have them? The only other thing that they could have done, Umach, is just pit with McLaren, just mimic them, right? And what would that have done? I think, Umach, you're being harsh on them for being ambitious, for trying to win a race. What is F1 if not for that victory ambition? Try and win a race. Roll a couple of sixes, or at least try to. Do you know what I mean, Umach? I just don't... there were no other fresh... put him on softs again. A 15-lap-old softs. It's going to get mugged, of course. Their hand was forced, sadly. And I can't... I don't know. I can't begrudge them that. I want to see F1 teams try and win a race, try and be bold in the face of adversity as an underdog against the papaya-coloured team, those MCL 39s that have the durable competitive advantage as far as lap time. Go for it. Go for it, Hannah Schmitz. Roll yourself. Try and roll yourself a couple of sixes. But for the safety car, they would have been good. But again, the F1 gods and racing gods giveth and they taketh away. Sadly, that's just the way it is in sports car racing, isn't it? Or motorsport, upper echelons of. So I'm calling it now. Mercedes engines for 2026 will not hold up. They have none of the original players from 2012. There are too many faders. So go on then, SO. I'm with you 60% of the way there, SO. I think there's a couple that I'm not sure whether you're factually accurate all of the way. Okay, so Andy Cowell's not there anymore, but James Allison is. And as I remember the split turbo hybrid operation in 2014, James Allison was intricately connected with it. Of course, Andy Cowell, now team principal of Aston Martin, the Green Machine, he was the head guy of their engine manufacturing program, split turbo hybrid. But James Allison was involved. And if you're listening to him and you trust in him, he says that the feeling around the 2026 power unit, 50% electric, 50% internal combustion is not dissimilar to what it was in 2013, 2014, going into the split turbo hybrid era. So take that for whatever you will. It hasn't been good, but I mean, it hasn't failed in McLaren. I think there's something to be said about cooling there, you know. Anytime you listen to a Mark Hughes of the race or a Gary Anderson, who's coming for a lot of flack on Twitter, by the way, of late. But anytime you listen to these mavens and technical savants, anytime they talk about McLaren in its gift, its ability to mitigate the tyre deg et al., there's a couple different things that are not so frequently spoken of, namely the efficiency of their internal cool. I'm talking about the McLaren car now. The efficiency of its internal cooling. You've heard it said that anytime it's hotter climbs, McLaren's advantage will go from here to here at the altar of the double brake, that at the altar of aerodynamic efficiency. But less often mentioned is the fact that they're much more efficient than the rest as far as their internal cooling. All the other teams are having to open up their bloody engine covers to make sure that they're guarding against reliability issues, just like Antonelli had in his Mercedes today. McLaren don't have to do that. They close up their engine. So I reckon if the Mercedes power unit as we see it, as at the first of the 62025, it was an absolute dog in the way you characterise it, SO, then surely McLaren would be having DNFs as well. How fast they go, do you know what I mean? AS4, Max is irrelevant. Yeah, of course he is. AS4. AS irrelevant, mate. Maybe as far as the championship, but never count him out. I mean, do we back against Max Verstappen these days? I don't think. Max should have stayed out, Starley, but it would have been a sitting duck even worse. You know what happens to soft, Starley? What are we talking about? I don't know. That's not Monday morning quarterback over here. Which is the strategy? Which strategy thinks that Max Verstappen can use soft tyres 19 laps? And you are doing a 3 pit stop, sad. Hard to not get mad. I don't know what you mean. Far too kind as always, Octave, but I don't understand quite what you mean. Come back to me. Drop another message, Octave, and we'll diatribe. I just don't think. I don't know what else you wanted them to do. Allison was at Ferrari in 2014. Visual, really? I thought that he was. I always thought. Oh, so in the interview, James Allison says something to the effect that those who were around the split turbo hybrid project in 2014 say then that they have a similar feeling now about the 2026 project that they did in 2014. Maybe. I don't know. Maybe I'm talking out my ASS here. Visual. The current Mercedes power unit was because of Norbert Haug. There you go. Visual knows more than me. Oscar did 22 laps on his soft. Did he? Bloody Nora. You guys are correct. Right, it's around third base. Let me just give Nico Rosberg and Brooksy some props. It's not easy. Every time I do the bloody live stream in the race, it's not easy to be the vocal punctuation for a bit of automotive pugilism. Everything's happening. And imagine Brooksy's got to go and ask the proper questions to a Max Verstappen who was none too keen to engage. And I think in the first instance, Brooksy did a good job. She said something to the effect. So she asked Max a couple of questions, one of which was, did you do that deliberately? I have to ask you, I'm sorry, but did you do that deliberately? Max's response was something like this. Does it even matter? Again, Max is a truth sayer almost to a fault. He's just like, does it even matter? Brackets unsaid. I'm 49 points adrift of the lead in the championship. Like, what am I going to do? Does it even matter? And then Brooksy continued and said, well, listen, we see Imola. You were amazing. Turn one of the best overtakes that we've ever seen. But then kids are at home going to be watching that move that you do on George and almost think by extension that because the 4 soon to be 5 time has done it, that it's okay. Max Verstappen said, I think, well, that's your opinion. That's your opinion. What do you want me to say? Max was like, that's your opinion. Brackets unsaid, I want to win and I was cheesed off and so I did what I did. Okay, to be accepted, Max pitted 14, lap 30, lap 47, 48 I think it was. He should have pitted at 53 or later on the softs though. Go on. 20. No, Octave. So those softs. So remember, Max did. So if you're doing a 3-stop, the Pirelli cheat sheet said a 3-stopper you do softs, medium, softs. Hang on, I'll get it up. I don't think that's quite right. Here's the thing, Octave. Your assumption is that you can do 20 laps on soft tyres because remember that second stint. So Max started on softs, went to another set of softs on 14, came in a lap 30 and went to another set of softs on lap 30. So your assumption then is that Max Verstappen could have done 23 laps on softs. Oscar could, in clear air, not having to get round Charles Leclerc, etc., on that bloody out-deggy, god-tier levels of MCL3. No, that's a different thing. I don't think we should do apples with apples. The soft compound tyre, given the aspect of Max's race, I think it's a big ask. I think it's a very big ask. And then what, like, he was still going to have to pit on he was still ultimately going to have to go and pit and be on hard day. So I'm not sure you mitigate the ultimate eventuality. It is not about winning. It was about keeping Max in a relatively better headspace. Crash Verstappen came alive and it was Red Bull's fault. But a lot of people are saying crash must happen and Mad Max has come alive. I don't know. It's Cameron, you're wrong. It was soft, medium. I say, you're saying he should have gone mediums. Soft, medium, soft, soft, medium, fair play. I don't know what take. It's all a blur now. It's been a long day, mate. You know what I mean? Been going back and forth. Forgive me if I've misremembered the number to 2 decimal places. Correct. Easy. People want him to play accountant to finish third in the WDC. He doesn't give a fudge. Only losers care about third. He did start with softs. In fact, you know what the joke is? Let's check this Octave as we round third base. I can do that now. We can have a look and put this all to bed because facts are important. And let's have a go. What did Max do? Max did. We'll do this and then I'll run off. I'll tell you what Max did. And now my thing's crashed, so I can't see. Fudge. Anyway, I tried Octave. You forced my hand, and I tried a thing, and it didn't work. You guys have been legends. I will catch you on the next one as always, 10 a.m. tomorrow. Thank you so much for backing the channel, for coming and engaging me, for fact checking me just as Octave has. very eloquently, oh, look, Octave, we're going to find out the truth here. And I can tell you the laps as well. So go on, Max Verstappen did, courtesy of our mates over at Multiviewer, by the way. Max Verstappen did 8 laps on soft. Oh, come on. So Max Verstappen, here's what he did. He did 16 laps on soft, 16 laps on soft again, 18 laps, 3 stopper, remember, Octave. 3 stopping, chap. That's what you've missed the stop out. So Max started. Go on. So started on the soft compound tyres. He did 16 on them. Came in lap 16 for another set of softs. So that's his first stop. Softs again. He's come out and he's put, his stint after that, he's put on mediums. And then after that, he's on softs. So the stop before the mediums was 11 laps worth of soft. There we go. And then he's done his final stint, 11 laps worth of hard. Download Multiviewer and they'll be able to tell you all of that good stuff because they are legends. Right, I'm going to go and sort out my voice chat because I'm about to catch a cold. His medium was short. I say, yeah, well, oh, so he could have gone a bit longer on there and just sacked off the mediums potentially. An extra, I don't know, Monday morning quarterbacking Octave, I think. It's techier than techie things. Right, have a fantastic rest of your Sunday. You guys are legends. I appreciate you ad infinitum in extremis. Too kind, Octave, as always, and great points. Fact checking me and holding my very noddy B-spec automotive pugilistic feet to the fire, as always. Back tomorrow with Mr. Windsor, hopefully, where we're going to be arguing. Mr. Windsor's going to be telling me how much of a buffoon I am, trying to praise Red Bull for their noddy strategy, just like you have, Octave. Between now and then, as always, legends one and all, thankful, grateful, in extremis. Somebody said to me as I'll end on this. Somebody said, "Oh, Cameron, you never thank the," and they weren't a member. They were just a watcher. You never thank the members. I was like, okay, what? You never watch a stream, clearly, because I make no apologies for belabouring the point. I am grateful to each and every single one of you, every single time, for following me through the low, medium and the high speed turns, fact checking me and calling me out just as Octave has on my B-spec noddy F1 ball feathers. I'm grateful, genuinely. Thank you so much. Between now and next time, the prosecution rests. No further questions, Your Honour.